Average life, no complaints. The school bell rang, startling James, who was correcting the last few assignments he had handed out on ionic bonds. He collected his papers, methodically sorting them out in his briefcase, which he closed with a metallic noise. It did not matter, though, because all noise was drowned out by the joyous laughter, yelling, and stomping from the students. Winter break. Finally, James sighed a sigh of relief, checking his desk. It was cleaner and far more organized than the surrounding ones. Waving goodbye to Sarah and George, two of his co-workers, he started getting ready. Buttoning up his dark brown cardigan, checking the collar of his shirt, and wearing his overcoat, James was ready to face the winter cold. He bid the headmaster goodbye and left the office. His footsteps echoed throughout the hallway, the tapping of the tile against the formal shoes he loved to wear filling the near-empty school with dread. Going through the large doors of the school, through the yard and into the now-empty streets, he smelled the cold winter air. It was windy, dense. Black clouds covered the sky. His eyes were already pinned on his car, 20 feet or so away. He revved up the engine and prepared himself for the yard-long drive home. An exhausting 50 minutes later, he could already imagine seeing the outline of his house in the distance. The large, two-story house, Edwardian architecture. The dining room and living room had one large bay window each. Then, the kitchen and his office were brightly lit by chandeliers, floor and table lamps. French-style furniture decorated the whole house. Upstairs, to bedrooms and to bathrooms equally large. Wooden floors and to fireplaces, one in the living room and one in his office. He always thought quite fondly of his house. It was very quiet, since it was remote and just in front of a large forest. Imagining it all, it took time, during which he had already parked his car and unlocked the front door. He closed and locked it behind him, leaving his coat on the coat rack, which loomed next to the door. He walked towards the kitchen, led by his and his wife's favorite song, as well as the inviting and admittedly appetizing smell of chicken soup. "Don't You Remember Me?" The music continued, reverberating throughout the whole house. James looked around but did not find anyone. In the dining room, he came across a bowl of soup and a note at the head of the table, looking outside. "Hey James, it's Martha. I will not be joining you for lunch today. My mother is sick and I had to go take care of her. Talk to you when I get home." James smiled slightly, a false smile hiding true sadness, perhaps because he could not speak to his beloved wife about his day, over a nice glass of wine and some hot food. Nevertheless, the bowl was steaming. Once he finished, he did the dishes and went upstairs into the master bedroom. Nevertheless, the bowl was steaming. Once he finished, he did the dishes and went upstairs into the master bedroom. He picked out a black pullover, a white collared shirt, and a nice pair of slacks and placed them on the bed. He took a nice, hot bath and got dressed, nice clothes, no complaints. Going downstairs, he looked outside the office window. The wind wheezed through the branches of the trees around his house, and the first few snowflakes hit the window softly. The clouds outside, now completely black, made the atmosphere a bit sinister. Nevertheless, James went into the kitchen and made himself a warm cup of Earl Grey, his favorite. He took the cup to the living room, placing it on the side table, right next to his armchair, facing the window. He went to one of the large bookshelves he had filled up with stacks upon stacks of books and other writings over the years. With his slim fingers, he picked one out, The Haunting of Hill House. By Shirley Jackson. It had just come out, maybe a year ago. James snickered. He was always fond of horror novels. Looking at the grandfather clock, which stood in the corner of the room, he noticed it was only 17:05. Despite the decently early hour, outside it was almost pitch black. With a sigh, James turned the table lamp on, producing a warm light which greatly contrasted the grim weather. A few hours later, Martha was still not home, much to his surprise, perhaps even a hint of concern. He dialed his ill mother-in-law's phone number, but to no avail. The lines were down due to the god-awful weather conditions. James got a bit anxious, but brushed it off with a glass of his favorite whiskey. He felt cold, so he lit the fireplace. It felt surreal. Alone in the snow, inside his house. Nobody was there to disturb him. good times, no complaints. 30 minutes later, the phone rang. Startled, James swiftly walked up to it. He picked it up and heard nothing but silence. Exasperated, he closed the phone. The lights flickered slightly, a painting in the hallway fell off the wall, and so did the cross James had hung above his office door. He propped them up in their proper positions when suddenly the lights turned off completely. He heard a door upstairs creak open. Scared as he was, James took a large bread knife from the kitchen and stalked his way up. Once there, he saw his bedroom door slightly open, with a nice warm light emanating from inside. He opened the door and looked inside. Carefully, nothing was wrong. James let out a breath which he must have held for more than 3 minutes now. Looking left, next to his bed, he saw his hunting rifle hung up on the wall, an old Winchester. He took it in his hands and used a towel to clean the barrel and scope, as well as the stock. Nice rifle, no complaints. Then, the phone rang again. Someone was knocking on the front door. Rifle in hand, James rushed down the stairs, staring into the long hallway. The lights were flickering constantly now. He felt dizzy. Something that sounded like chanting radiated from the phone. He was sweating. His eyes were wide open. He breathed so very quickly. He cocked the gun. He opened the door. He shot. What did he shoot at? What had the decently small caliber round hit? Across from James now lies Martha. Blood pooled around her throat and neck, making small streams in the snow. Tiny, almost inaudible gurgling. James cocks his gun again. He watches his wife's life slip away from her. She was still slightly spasming. James took the barrel to Martha's head and pulled the trigger. The fireplace crackled. The phone rang no longer. The wind wheezed into the so remote house. Who would find her in the forest? Good burial site, no complaints. Thank you for watching. Subscribe and follow my other socials.